Okay, so 9:30, time to start. I'd like to call to order. First of all, we got your confirmation of quorum. Tom?
Yes, you have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we'll call this meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee of Wednesday, May 12th to order.
Move adoption of the public agenda.
Second.
Okay. Anyone opposed? It's carried. Petitions and delegations. There are no petitions and delegations. Do we have one on the board meeting, Tom? I know I saw one somewhere.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe there's a delegation for the board this afternoon, yes.
Okay. Okay, adoption to item E, adoption of previous meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move one amendment to those minutes.
I move their adoption first so we can have the
Yeah.
amendment.
Yeah, we need to have
Second,
the minute on the floor.
second.
Okay, then go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you. I did send my motions in writing to Edith last night, so she probably has the proposed amendment, but I can read it out if you wish.
Okay, is it going to be up on the screen in
Yeah,
a minute? Or
it's
what?
up on the screen now. That the minutes of April 14th, SRD 7021, be amended to delete all words after Community Works Fund with the words, quote, for upgrading of water meters on the Black Creek Oyster Bay water system, and that the 2021 to 2025 financial plan be amended accordingly.
Mr. Chair, if I could, for the committee's information, that particular motion, and Director Lee was kind enough to send that in advance, so we did some checking, and the motion that is currently printed in the minutes is exactly the motion that was passed at the committee. So I'm not sure if the intent is to correct what is perceived to be an error, or whether it's to change the intent of a resolution that's already been passed. And there is a distinction to be made there. So I can confirm that the minutes were in fact exactly as passed by the committee.
Okay,
Well,
so if I could just hang on, Brenda.
okay.
If minutes are correct, then what is the process for Brenda to insert that wording into the public record? Is that has to be another motion somewhere, or what?
Mr. Chairman, I would believe this would fall under the title of amending a resolution rather than amending the minutes. The minutes are just a record of what actually transpired, whereas the ability to amend a resolution is always available to the committee.
So how do we do that?
Simple motion to amend, as long as it's supported by a majority, would carry.
Okay, and that would be at this time or after adoption of the previous minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that would be more appropriately under business arising from the minutes, if there was a change to a decision of the committee previously made.
Okay, so
Okay, I'll bring it up under business arising.
can we go ahead then and call the question on adoption of the previous minutes? Anyone opposed?
Director Lee.
Okay, one opposed. Business arising from the minutes. So Brenda, you have.
Thank
Okay,
you.
is
So
it-
I would put that motion forward for under business arising for that resolution. And by the way, that resolution appears on the board agenda, the correct one, appears on the board agenda this afternoon, and it does not align with what the Electoral Area Committee minutes say. So, you know, I could have just ignored it and voted on this at the board, but I think it's better to have things correct than not. So that's why I voted against the minutes, because I think there was some kind of mistake here. But
I'll second the motion for discussion, and I would like to understand how it changes the content. I'm just not familiar with this item enough to understand the substance of the difference.
okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Just thanks.
Would you like
Okay,
answer that?
7021. So the current motion in the minute says that we're going to take 30,000 from the Electoral Area D Community Works Fund, including the preparation of agreement to facilitate the contribution and allocation for the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water System Water Replacement Project, and that the 2021 to 25 financial statement be amended accordingly. It's not a water replacement project. It is a meter replacement project, and that is what is in the board agenda today. So I think probably just the word an agreement to facilitate the contribution and allocation for the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water System meter replacement project would work. Because it's all about the meters in Black Creek Oyster Bay. It's not anything about a water replacement project.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just through the staff, the motion that was recorded in the EASC minutes was, I'm asking through the staff, was that a motion that was recommended by staff, or was that a motion that the committee crafted? And is the motion that Director Lee is proposing to us now indeed the one that staff are recommending on the board today?
So, Mr. Chair, I can answer the first part of that fairly easily. Yes, the motion that was dealt with at the last meeting concerning the contribution from the Community Works Fund was a motion that was recommended by staff and printed on the agenda for the committee's consideration, and it was moved verbatim at that time.
Thank you. And is the motion that we're currently seeing on the screen from Director Lee the same as a staff recommended motion on the board later today?
I would have to check, but I think there are some differences. I'd have to be quite honest, I would have to check. And it may be more appropriate to deal with that at board as business arising. I mean, to deal with that as business arising at this point really is to suggest that the committee would have a different recommendation for the board, presumably. I'll leave it to the committee to decide whether this is a better approach or to deal with it at board.
I'm just thinking, Director Lee, if this is, I mean, I understand wanting concurrence between committee and board, but if we don't have any time really between committee and board, and what is at board today is indeed what you're intending, and that staff have done somehow a better job between committee and board of crafting a resolution that is to point, would that suffice, Director Lee?
Well, I would rather it be correct, because I don't know what it means by water replacement project. I mean, nobody was even thinking about that when I made the motion. It could have just been misinterpreted or misheard, but it was definitely water meter replacement. That is what the $30,000 is for. And I'm quite sure, just looking in the board agenda, that's what the board agenda resolution says. So I would really like not to leave any doubt in anyone's mind in the future about a water replacement project that I didn't refer to in my motion. You know, that I certainly didn't intend it to be interpreted that way. So something happened. Maybe it was just misheard, and or maybe I didn't enunciate the word clearly enough for the staff, but it was about the water meter replacements, and I would like our
Okay.
committee to be consistent with that.
Can I interrupt here, Brenda? If what is at the board is what you are asking for, this is a recommendation from a committee to the board. The board obviously has the recommendation correct in your mind. And it seems that if the board, I mean, we don't pass the motion or the final resolution, it's passed at the board. So it seems, after listening to Director Anderson and you, it seems like if it is correct at the board, then we could just go with the board resolution, and that should cover your wishes. That's my opinion. I don't.
Mr. Chair, I think either is fine. I'm happy to support this resolution as long as I can hear from staff that substantively there isn't any concern.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe staff are well aware that the intent here is to participate in funding for the upgrading of water meters. I think that's been pretty clear all along. Whether the wording is precise enough in the mind of directors or not, I don't know, but that is certainly the understanding that staff have.
Okay, so if staff have got it right here in their minds, and they've got it right in writing and in their minds at the board, can we just move forward, pass it here, pass it there, and move on?
I would like this to be correct at the Electoral Area Committee. I don't want any future misinterpretation of what the committee decided. There are, sensitive issues around water in Black Creek Oyster Bay, and I want to be clear that this is about the water meter project, the 30,000, and nothing else. So I don't want anybody from the public misinterpreting what is going on here. It's a $30,000 grant from Area D's gas tax funds to go towards upgrading meters in the Black Creek Oyster Bay water system. And I'd like
So
it to be correct.
Are we basically discussing one word meter?
Yes, we are, but there have been moves.
One word. Would anybody have a problem with changing one word meter?
I'm happy to support the motion in front of us.
Okay, I don't want to dwell on this all day. Okay, so what's?
I would move my amendment under business arising, and let's get it right.
Call the question.
Okay, on the question. All those in favor? Or sorry, anybody opposed? Passed. Public considerations, we have none. Chair's report. Okay. I did have, I'm just going to leave it. Chair's report, I'll forget it and do it another time. Staff reports, we're on to Oyster Bay lands, First Nations consultation, Area D, RZ1D 21.
Move receipt of report.
Okay, receipt of the CAO's report. Any discussion? All those, anybody opposed? Okay, nobody opposed, it's received.
So,
Okay, item B.
Okay,
The committee recommend First Nations consultation, pardon me.
Mr. Chair, I sent in some written motions to Edith last night, so that should be available. The first one that I sent in, Edith.
You're gonna have to read them because my screen still only shows a thumbnail of, right now it's Brenda, and that's it. That's all I got on my screen.
Oh,
15,
I see.
So I don't.
Okay.
So
And
if
do we
somebody
have
could
the-
read it,
Okay, my motion
Just-
is up.
Order question, Mr. Chair? Just,
pardon
I
me?
understand that we have somebody with us that I don't know is the applicant or somebody who about this matter. Are they intending to speak? I'm just trying to understand why they're on the meeting with us.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hagan, who is one of the applicants, did ask for an opportunity to speak to the committee on this issue. So, and he is with us today if the chair wishes to consider.
Mr. Chair, I don't think it's appropriate to hear from delegations today on this issue. I have a motion in front of us here on the screen that says, and I'll move it, that item I1.
Before you do, Brenda, I would just like to say on that delegation part, I would have preferred if there was a request for a delegation that it be under requests for delegations, and we would have already heard the person, and then we could move on as we always do. So I would think it would be out of order completely for Mr. Hagan to be speaking on this issue. Not anything against Mr. Hagan, but it's just not our usual process. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Mr. Chair,
go ahead, Brenda.
Okay, so
just
the
if we
motion
can
that
hold
I,
on a second, just Mr. Chair, I tend to agree with you on that, and I apologize for that. I'm going to ask Mr. Hagan if he can disconnect from the meeting, because you're correct, that's not our traditional process, and we welcome delegations, but I think Mr. Hagan should have been on as a delegation if he requests. So I'm just going to ask him if he can. It has not been our standard process to have folks join or participate in the meeting, and I'd like to be consistent with that. So, Mr. Hagan, if you could disconnect, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, that's not been my experience. I don't think it's uncommon for people to speak to the committee on a matter on the agenda at all. Done that since COVID and certainly before. And if we wanted Mr. Hagan as a delegation, we should have directed him as such. I mean, I don't have an opinion about this particular matter, but I think it was a point of procedural fairness. If somebody is here on the call with us under the understanding that they'd be given an opportunity to speak and we have failed to put them in the right slot on the agenda, that's on us.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think he should have been as a delegation, so I'll apologize to him. It has not been our standard process, especially with COVID, that we've had people participate in discussions on reports or applications. This, I'll just add though, before Director Lee goes, all this report is a referral though. There isn't really, there's no intent for anything further than to present a referral process out on this application.
Okay, and as the
Okay,
chair,
thank
I'm
you.
going to agree. I'm going to agree with our CAO completely. I do understand what you're saying, Director Anderson. We have had people speak at times during the meeting where we have requested them during the meeting proceedings since they were in the room. This is pre-COVID, where there has been a question where we have asked them if they could clarify something or something along those lines. But they did not come to us in that manner to speak to us as a delegation. So I would
I think
suggest
it's staff's fault there. I think we didn't give him clear direction on that. It will take responsibility for that. So it's certainly not Mr. Hagan.
I don't care. I don't care who's to blame. I just want to move on. That's
Mr. Chair, might I suggest then that if it's truly on us, that we vary the agenda and go back to delegations, if that's
Point
where
of
you
order,
need-
Mr. Chair, point of order. My motion is, and my point is not to block Mr. Hagan from making a presentation. He will have plenty of time as one of the owners of this property to make presentations regarding this application. The motion that I have in front of our committee today is that the item
well, we don't need to get to the motion yet.
okay, but it's to defer, so
We'll get to the motion in a minute. But at this particular time, I'm going to rule that if Mr. Hagan wishes to come as a delegation, that he go through the process with staff. They can lead him through that very clearly, and he can appear at a subsequent meeting. You will not appear at this meeting. Thank you very much. Now, Brenda, you may move on to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm moving that item I1, which is CP1D21 RZ1D21, Oyster Bay lands, be referred back to staff to prepare a report to EASC for plans for an open public meeting prior to the bylaws being prepared and referred to agencies, and that the open public consultation will be held in an open public forum as and when it is permitted by public health orders. And
we need a seconder, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I need a seconder.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay,
So-
moved and seconded. Dave had something to say.
Yeah, I just want to let the committee know that I'm not sure if Director Lee is aware or not, or other committee members. We have a planning and procedures and fees bylaw that is prescriptive in nature, that follows an application process. What Director Lee's motion here is in total contravention of that. So we have a process, we have a bylaw that we're following. This report before you follows that bylaw and that process. So I just want the committee to know that this motion here is in contradiction of that.
Mr. Chair, this is not a minor OCP amendment. It needs to be addressed by staff and directors of EASC at the very least in open public consultation before it is ready to be written up as bylaws and referred out to committees and referral agencies. To me, it would be an entirely huge waste of time to refer something out that is not ready to go out yet. It hasn't had enough input from EASC, it hasn't had enough input from public, and to do this referral at this time contravenes all rational procedures, because we need to have something that makes sense, and this does not make sense to me at the present time, and I need to have more, I need to have it referred back to staff for a further report after public consultation, and that's what I'm asking for. I'm the director. I have the right to ask for that, and
so
I'm asking for it.
if I may, Mr. Chair, taking into consideration the comments of the CAO, taking into consideration the wishes of the director for the area, and taking into consideration the fact that we have not had very much discussion or whatever on this particular application. I don't even remember what it looked like, but sorry. That's on my bad. But could your motion just be shortened up to that the committee recommended that it be referred back to staff for a further report, period?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that provides clarity for us. I'm just going to read you that the planning procedures bylaw application to amend the zoning or an OCP, the very first step in the process is that the application will be forwarded for comment to other governmental departments and agencies. We don't have, we're going to need further instruction from the committee if we're to provide you with a report. You just can't say that staff report back. We have a process that we follow. We take this information, and if you read the staff report, we say, upon completion of the consultation process, a full report regarding the proposal and the associated information will be provided to you. We don't have anything yet. So I'm not sure what you want to report on. We're following the process, step one in the application and through the bylaw.
Mr. Chair? What we need what we need a report from planning is the public consultation. This is a major OCP amendment, and it requires public input. And, you know, you can't just make up a new zone that's entirely opposing our OCP and then refer it out to agencies. That is just bizarre. I'm asking for public consultation to be held in an open public forum, and then to come up with the appropriate OCP amendments to send out to the agencies. That is totally within our procedures bylaw. It says
Yes.
consultation first and foremost. And if you're not going to consult, if you're just going to ram through some, you know, whimsical new zone that planning has made up without consultation with my community, then go through the agencies and then nothing will happen with it. Because
Mr. Chair,
it's not
again,
based on consultation.
Again, if the director reads the planning procedures bylaw, there is a process and a step for public consultation within that.
I'm asking that this go back to staff to prepare a public consultation session regarding the OCP amendments. It's simple. It's what we always do.
No, it's not what we always do. No, it's not.
I totally disagree, and I don't believe that staff should be playing politics with my area.
Mr. Chair, this is out of order. Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
Okay.
The staff, Mr. Chair, the staff is following the procedures bylaw. We are not playing politics. I can read you the process and the procedures bylaw. Please do not accuse the staff of playing politics. We're following board bylaw policy. Thank you.
Okay. And
okay, so the interpretation.
Excuse me, Director Lee, I'm speaking.
Sorry.
Because of that presentation just now from our CAO and the wording of what he read to us, yes, staff are following what we have now as the procedures bylaw. If we wish that to change, then it's something that we would have to go through whatever process Tom and Dave and anybody else comes up with for changing a procedure bylaw in order to make it different from what it is now. And if that's the wish of the committee, fine. I imagine motions can be made to that effect, but at this time, it sounds like the movement to refer it out is strictly it's almost a moot point in that it's going out to agencies. If you don't feel that the agencies that are being referred are correct, then perhaps that can be corrected. I don't know. I'm talking off the top of my head here because I don't have it in front of me. So are there agencies that are there or that are not there that need to be referred before this can come back to the committee, excluding the public part of it, just the agency and First Nations part? Are there some of those that are either missing or in addition to? I'll ask that question. Is anybody going to answer it?
Well,
Mr.
from a
Chair.
staff's perspective, there's a recommendation on referrals, but always open to add to the list.
Okay, so Director Lee, are there boxes that should be checked?
Mr. Chair,
referral. Yes.
if I thought it was a good idea to send out a half-baked change to our OCP and our zoning bylaws that hasn't had any public input or discussion, then I would say, you know, we could send it out to agencies. But if we send out something that's half-baked and we're just wasting all those agencies' time, because eventually I want to have public consultation on this issue. It's major in Area D. And So eventually we'll be putting out a whole new proposed OCP amendment and zoning, and maybe we won't be changing the zoning bylaw or the OCP. So I want to consult the public about that. It shouldn't be the purview of one person in the planning department. It should be the purview
Again, Mr.
of
Chair, this is
Area
out of
Ds.
order. We're following the procedures bylaw, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
then I move that this whole issue
It's
be
not the
suspended.
purview of one staff member.
Mr. Chair,
Enough.
I'd like to move
Okay,
that the whole,
I
that
understand that.
I would like to move that we end debate on this issue, that we put forward a new motion to amend the procedures bylaw to require public consultation on major OCP amendments prior to a consultation to agencies being sent out. So that's, I move to suspend debate on this issue, and then I'll make a subsequent about changing the procedures bylaw.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
I have to go to,
is
I
the,
would like to, could I please ask senior staff, Tom probably, is this the procedure that we would have to follow?
so Mr. Chairman, if I understand correctly, Director Lee, because you do have a motion on the floor, it's moved and seconded dealing with the preparation of a new report. I'm not sure what the status of that is before introducing a new motion. If the intent is to defer the motion that's already on the floor pending a review of the procedures bylaw, then I think that would probably be in order. But if the intent is to move in a different direction, I think you need to deal with the motion that is on the floor currently before you do that.
It sounds to me, if I may, as your chair, say that your suggestion that your Tom, your suggestion that this be deferred, and the reason being that it will give an opportunity for staff and the committee and the board, whoever, to look at amendments to the procedures bylaw. I think that would cover all of it.
Move
It
the
may
floor.
not move forward, but it will cover. So what is, I'm not making the motion, folks. Come on, let's move along here.
Okay, move that the motion on the floor be withdrawn for the moment, or deferred until after we review the procedures bylaw with regard to public consultation.
Okay, could you clarify the word?
Okay, that the motion on the floor be deferred.
Deferred, okay.
The motion on the floor be deferred until we receive a staff report on a proposal to change the procedures bylaw to prioritize public consultation.
Why don't we just withdraw the motion, Brendan?
Okay, we can withdraw that first motion. Yeah, I could bring it back later.
Yeah.
At a different meeting.
I
The
agree.
motion on the, okay, so then it would be that the Oyster Bay Lands issue be deferred until a staff report on a proposed change to the procedures bylaw concerning public consultation and bylaw development be sent back to the committee and be incorporated into our procedures bylaw.
Mr. Chair, can't we just withdraw this motion? The seconder would be in agreement with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's been done. Am I correct in that, Tom?
Mr. Chairman, if the mover and seconder have both requested or indicated they would like to withdraw the motion, then I think as chair you can make that decision. I've not heard anyone opposing the withdrawal of it, so I'm assuming that would be acceptable to the committee to do that and then move on.
Okay, so take the first.
The original motion that Director Lee made that was lengthy, etc., is off the table. We are now back at between A and B. There's an insertion in there of a new resolution, which is that this issue be deferred until a review of the procedures bylaw has taken place concerning public consultation. I think that is close enough to what you are saying, Director Lee. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I was going to say prioritizing public consultation before referral of the bylaws out to agencies.
Okay, well, I don't know that if it's number one on the list on the procedure bylaw, it's number one. I don't think we need to say prioritize. I don't know. It's just my thoughts. The motion is on from you folks. Oh, Lord.
It's Director Lee's motion. I'd appreciate if we could have it written as she is putting it forward, and then we can either amend or vote it down, or.
Please get
Okay, so the motion would be, okay, the motion is typed up, but it's kind of screwed up. So I would put forward that the issue of the Oyster Bay lands be deferred until we receive a report from staff regarding amendments to our planning procedures bylaw which would require public consultation in bylaw development.
How about just,
or you could leave the whole last part out because you know what we want, which would require public consultation as a priority in the process. Just say as a priority in the process.
Your motion. Okay, Edie, are you able to keep up with that or what?
She's got
I
it.
can't see it. I can't see it,
good.
so.
Yeah,
It looks good, Edie.
we have it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so can I please have Tom, can you please read the motion to me since I can't see it?
Okay, certainly. So moved by Director Lee that the issue of the Oyster Bay lands be deferred until we receive a report from staff regarding amendments plural, to the planning procedures bylaw, which would require public consultation as a priority in the process.
Mr. Chair, I suggest instead of require, we change that word to allow, because you don't want it necessarily every time.
Okay, I agree with that. Allow.
Okay, I got it.
So, Mr. Chairman, we do
All right.
not have a seconder as far as I'm aware.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded, Wally.
I'd like to speak to
Okay,
the matter.
discussion.
Yes,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. My understanding from what Director Lee is saying is that she would like a moment for open public discussion as the first step in our planning procedure bylaw before referral. I don't think this speaks to that. This says just as a priority in the process, and I think our current planning procedures with a public hearing does prioritize that. So I don't think this gets to what she's trying to affect the change of. Either way, I would not be supporting it. I think that it's important by the time we get to public hearing that we have sort of the best proposal to put forward that has gone through agency referrals and has had the fulsome weight of staff thinking on it and has received a couple of hearings from us so that we can offer any changes. I think it's unadvisable to engage the public on something that, as Director Lee is saying, is not a great proposal. But I'm also even more so really concerned that we are trying to amend our common best practice that has served us, as long as I've been here, and I'm sure before, for one particular application. And I'm concerned that with these big proposals, we saw one on Quadra and we're seeing one here now, that we throw out our regular process because we're concerned about the proposal. I have no issue voting down bad proposals that are not in line with the OCP and are not supported by the director and are not supported by the community. And however frustrating and seemingly waste of time it is, both to staff and to the public, it is indeed the prerogative of a landowner to make any proposal that they like, however fantastic or harebrained it might be. And I don't think it appropriate that we be delaying it through procedural gerrymandering, if you will. I think our procedure bylaw is very well thought through. I would like to see this follow it, and I'm happy to vote it down if it's not a good one. So I'll not be supporting any deferral or deviation from the process that we normally follow. Now, if we want to amend our planning procedures bylaw concurrently, because we think that's a great thing to do, fair enough. But to tie it to this, I think is quite procedurally unfair to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. It was originally my understanding that we would be looking at both. We would be proceeding and we would be proceeding on two different matters, even though they're tied. And apparently that's got that wrong. The only thing that I would like to throw in there is that if a proposal from anyone comes forward and staff work with the proponent to devise new zones, whatever, changes that need to be made, well, that is part of the process, absolutely. If there is some discussion as to whether or not there's going to be a very lengthy process started because of that procedure, then perhaps changing the procedure slightly is a good idea to be able to allow for, and this is just a thought, just to allow for some discussion as to what's going to happen next. Is the community going to raid the regional district office when it's safe and say, no way? Are they going to come in, droves to say, wonderful? We don't know that. And, we usually wait till the public hearing to do that. But in the meantime, there's a number of months of back and forth between community, director, and staff and regional district board. So, do we want to streamline that? If we do want to streamline it, then let's think about streamlining it. The only way we're going to think about that is have a separate process on the side that says, okay, we're going to look at the bylaw and see what makes sense. And if there's things in there that are 30 years that maybe don't make sense anymore, then we look at changing them. If there's things that do make sense, we just keep them and move on. This particular one, I believe the first part of it is that it be deferred. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so yes, I'd have to ask Tom, is there a way that we can just defer B, and C, and then have a D that is the rest of the motion, which was look at the procedures bylaw.
Mr. Chair, if you defer the B and C, as you say, all this is a referral process. So you're in essence deferring the report.
Mr. Chairman, I would add that I think if you're going to defer this item specifically to look at changes to the planning procedures bylaw, then there is there is a danger there that that it will be interpreted that the application itself is being targeted, as opposed to following the process that has been set out for uniform consideration of all applications that come in. So it does perhaps enter into that dangerous area where someone could allege that it's the application itself that is being targeted for a different process for whatever reason. It would be best to keep the two processes separate, in my opinion, but that's really for the committee to recommend to the board.
Mr. Chair, I'll go one step further in that we're clearly talking about amending the procedures bylaw as a result of this application. There's no two ways about that.
Okay. All right. And there could be other applications from other places, other times that we may want to amend it for. It doesn't have to be tied to this. So that's what I was trying to do, was unravel it and say, okay, if you want to defer this part of it, talk about deferral. And then if you want to do a procedure bylaw review, make a motion somewhere, wherever, Tom, Dave, you say it fits into the agenda. Make a recommendation motion that we review our procedures bylaw. I mean, that part seems pretty simple.
Yeah, it does, Mr. Chair, and I'm just gonna, for the director's information, I'm just going to, before you vote on that, make you understand that you are clearly deferring this to make amendments or consider amendments to the procedures bylaw. That is clear. That may open up the board to litigation.
Okay, the reason that I would have said that possibly you could defer it is because it was mentioned in Brenda's explanations that there's things missing, there's things, there, not there, or whatever in the referral process.
No, Mr. Chair, there's nothing missing. This is a simple referral process. This is the very first step. There's nothing to miss other than referrals.
Okay, what I was referring to, Dave, sorry, I wasn't clear. Things missing being boxes that weren't perhaps, I don't know, one agency, one First Nation, 5 First Nations. I don't know, but obviously there's some consternation over the referral list isn't complete. If that's the case,
I'm not certain it is. A report that we have outlined a recommendation for a referral list. We have not received, the report was deferred last meeting, and we have not received any recommendations on additional referrals. So I don't even know if this is our recommendation on the referral list. If there's additions, happy to take them.
Okay, well, I'm just going to sit back here in my chair and look at my screen, and you guys figure it out, please. Let's move on.
Mr. Chair, I would request that you call this motion out of order or procedurally inappropriate, given that I don't see how we can backtrack now from linking the Oyster Bay land situations to the procedure bylaw amendment, if that's the road we go down, and singling this application out and opening ourselves to very right litigation. I don't think this is the way to proceed at all. So the matter that's on the floor
Point of order,
now
Mr. Chair, I don't think anybody on this committee or on the staff should be inviting the idea of litigation. All I'm asking for, actually, what we should be doing is getting the bylaws in place, in proper shape, so that we have something decent to refer out, because right now we don't. This is one of the biggest. So I would say that we should just change the recommendation to say that the issue of Oyster Bay lands be deferred until the planning staff report back to EASC on possible amendments to the bylaw, and to be developed into the bylaws before it is referred out to agencies. And then a subsequent motion would be to look at the procedures bylaw and to assure the EASC that if there's major amendments to an OCP, we need public consultation first and foremost. You know, and I didn't even myself, I didn't even get consulted by planning for not even 3 minutes about this.
The procedures do not allow us to consult.
Yeah, the procedures need fixing. That's what I'm saying. And, you know, before we refer it out to agencies.
As the chair, what I'm saying is they are very closely tied, according to the way you have worded your motions, Brenda. Even your last motion completely ties this to a change in procedures bylaw. What I was trying to do originally 10, 15 minutes ago was detach them.
Okay, let's detach them.
Deal with it. Pardon me?
Well, I mean, honestly, at this point, there's no detaching.
And Mr. Chair, that was the point I was trying to make, that there's no backing up from the quagmire that we've got ourselves into. There's no detaching here.
There's no quagmire. Come on. Mr. Chair, call the question on the motion. Call the question. You know, I'm fed up with not being consulted at all about a major 400-acre application in my area, not being consulted by planning, not getting sufficient information to EASC so that we can develop proper bylaws that can then be sent out to the agencies. I know it's something wrong with our procedures bylaw, but even no matter what, this application is a major application for Area D. It needs full public consultation and input from EASC. And however the staff can manage to do that within the constraints that we presently have, then do it. But so I would move to defer this whole issue until we receive a staff report, period. You know what I want. We all know what has been discussed, and let's just do it. I mean, I just have no patience for all this hair splitting and threats and, you know, browbeating.
Okay. If I'm going to interrupt, and be careful, Brenda Lee. We're not being browbeaten, and there aren't any threats. What I am going to suggest is that, is it possible for us to just back up? We received the report. The next item is B. Committee recommend consultation, blah, blah, blah. Just that's in between A and B, just.
There's a motion on the floor, Mr. Chair.
What is, yes, I'm trying to get to the point of saying, scrap the motion and say that the committee recommend that this issue be deferred until the next EASC meeting, period. It's not tied to anything. Staff know why we're talking about deferring it. If they want to call us, ask me to call a special meeting of the EASC to discuss the procedure bylaw, be more than happy to. If you guys want to, you know, throw it out to lawyers, do whatever you want. but I'm just trying to move on and untie this from any possible litigation, as Dave talked about, because there's nothing there that says anything about it's being deferred because it's being deferred for a further staff report period. We do that all the time. Now, is there anything that staff would like to say, Dave or Tom, concerning my suggestion?
I would support your suggestion. So I would support amending the current motion on the floor to just say that the issue of the Oyster Bay lands be deferred. Not saying why, but we all know why.
Is that a chuckle, Dave?
Well, I mean, first of all, these meetings are recorded and they're played back. They're put on the minutes. So to say we're going to defer, we're not going to say why. We know why. Again, anyone can listen to these recordings as soon as they're posted on Friday.
Oh, good. I'm not saying anything that's wrong.
So
I'm trying to express my honest opinion about why we should go to public consultation.
So all I'm going to ask then is of the chair, we are going to be asked by the applicant the reason for deferral, and I think it's appropriate that the committee provide that. I mean, we've already once deferred this issue because the director said she needed more time, and so now if the resolution is just to defer this period, it puts us in a little bit of an awkward position with the applicant to say, what are we doing? What's the next steps? Give them some timelines.
Be deferred until public consultation takes place.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Yes, Gerald. Go ahead, Gerald.
I think what we should do after hearing all this is withdraw this motion again, like we did the previous one. And my opinion is we should let the referral go ahead on this particular issue. And under new business, we could have a separate motion to review the procedure bylaw, if that's the intent.
The trouble with that,
that's exactly what I was trying to do. That's exactly what I was trying to do, being the speaker, by adding a D, which said that we have a further discussion about the procedure bylaw. It was exactly the same thing you're saying, Gerald, but it was still, in this section. So let it go. Do what you want. It's up to you guys.
Let's withdraw the motion, Brenda, and under new business, we can have a motion for a review of the procedures bylaw.
The trouble with sending it out to agencies at this point, we don't have a coherent bylaw because we haven't done any consultation with East or with the public. We're not, so we just have to accept that planning staff have all the answers to our land use issues in our area and our OCP, and that no one else has a say in that.
Excuse me.
This is our area.
That's not what we're saying.
This is our area. It's not the business of simply one or two people on staff to decide how to do a major change.
Mr. Chair, we're following the bylaw.
Well, I tried to change the bylaw, but you don't want to do that either. So, tell me what you want to do.
You got to keep saying it's the purview of staff. All this is a referral list. We have limited information to report on. It's what we always do, no matter how big or small. It's not staff creating a bylaw.
What are we referring? What are we referring?
The information that we have.
What information do we have? It seems to be a big waste of time to refer it out to agencies without any information.
No, back and forth. Okay. Now, we either have a motion to, I guess, do we still have to withdraw that other motion, Tom?
I mean, you can withdraw. I don't know where Tom went, but you can withdraw it if that's what the committee wishes. Tom, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, I would agree. Director Wally, who seconded the motion, has suggested it be withdrawn and that an introduction under new business, or sorry, under new business, sorry, to deal with changes to the planning procedures bylaw should be addressed at that time rather than now. That was my recollection.
All right, let's go with that then. I'm not happy, but let's go with that. I would like to know more about what's going on.
Okay, so then you were the mover, I believe, Brenda. Are you withdrawing your motion?
I'll move a withdrawal.
Okay, seconder has withdrawn.
Yeah.
Motion's gone. The next motion is item B, committee recommend First Nations consultation process, and item C, committee recommend agency referral list, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so
I would move that B and C be, they're incorporated into a motion that I sent to Edie as a backup in case we entered into these snags, which I thought we would probably. So Edie, you have my motion about the referral agencies? The list?
I don't.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
the
give
list of referral agencies. So I'm moving that as and when we have clear and definitive direction from East concerning the Oyster Bay land, concerning the above, that bylaws be prepared which clearly define the permitted uses being contemplated, and that the following agencies be added to the referral list. Area D Advisory Planning Commission, Agricultural Land Reserve, Private Managed Forest Advisory Board, Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources BC, Oyster River Enhancement Society, Black Creek Oyster Bay Services, CVRD, for fire suppression and water, Environment Canada, Water Controller for BC, Island Health, and the Archaeology Branch of BC. Concerning culture.
Are those additions?
And Moiety. So yes, a lot of them are additional. It's a complete list that I've made that I think need to be referred. Top of the list is the Area D APC, which was not included in the agency referral list.
So
if I may, Dave, the motion started out sounding too much like the original, until we get planning, blah, blah, blah. And then it went to that the committee recommend the consultation process. So
well,
that it's stuck in there. We're either going to, that's already been pulled off the table.
Okay, take that off. That the following agencies be referred, and then Area D Advisory Planning Commission, ALR, Private Managed Forest, etc.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So Director Lee, appreciate you sending that in. And yeah, I think eliminating the caveat before added to the referral list, as we just discussed at length, kind of is an issue. So removing that, I appreciate the recommendations on the additional referrals.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks for sending it in advance. That's very helpful.
Okay.
All right, so those will be added to the referral list and they will be sent out. And is there any further discussion? Is there anyone? Oh,
just for clarity, Mr. Chair, is it B on the table with the added referral list then?
No, I'm moving this list as a replacement for B and C. Oh, and I didn't put First Nations.
But my question,
we have to do B First Nations, and then we do this.
My question is just around the preamble. Is what is on the floor the regular B with the additional referral agencies that Director Lee has put forward?
Yes.
Thank you. That I can support.
Sorry, and I don't mean to be a problem here. So just for clarity for me, Director Lee, so we have a referral list. Am I correct in saying you're just adding these to our list?
I'm just making sure I'm covering all the bases that need to be referred.
Okay, we have things on our list that are not on your list?
Well,
So,
okay,
so
so you can say that the following agencies be, I did say it.
yes, yes.
Be
yes,
added to the referral list.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is there a seconder on this motion?
I
No.
would second if it is B as presented with any additions rather than substitutions, yes.
That is what it is. So you're seconding that motion. Now,
said-
is there any further discussion? Are there any opposed? Okay, that goes forward. C, committee recommend agency referral list. As outlined in the staff report, be approved with the additions, I guess you'd have to put.
So move
we're
C with
speaking-
the amendment, with the additions.
That's fine.
Second.
Okay. Moved, seconded. Anybody want to discuss it?
No.
Okay, anyone opposed? It's passed.
So we will have a
Consultation.
new business.
Pardon me?
We will have a new business regarding the procedures bylaw, right?
That comes later.
Okay.
Consultation process, number 2, Treaty Ventures.
Move receipt.
Report from Maciel.
Second.
Seconder.
Anderson, second.
Discussion. Yeah. Discussion. Any opposed? Carried. And then B.
Move B.
Second.
Okay.
I do have a point of discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to see this application follow our regular procedure. My question with regards to the First Nation consultation list is I noticed that the Comox First Nation is not one of the proposed referral nations. And my understanding is that Comox actually does have most, if not all, of Cortes Island claimed in their lands. So I'm just wondering why we would omit Comox.
I'll defer that to Annika. Or John, sorry.
Thank you, through the chair. I would have taken that list from the Consultative Areas Database, which is a provincial database of First Nations which have an interest in the area. But certainly I can circulate this application to the Comox band as well. I'll just add them to the list.
Yeah,
Thank you.
certainly not part of their core territory, but I do remember some earlier mapping that we did and we had on the wall at one point where the Comox did have a claim to Cortes. So I would request then that for this referral, Comox be added, and perhaps we just take a look into the Comox's traditional land claim, and then you can let us know for future whether you think it's advisable to have them as being a standing referral nation for Cortes. So I would just move that amendment then that Comox be added.
Second.
Anyone want to discuss it? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C.
I have a question, Mr. Chair, before we move on. My question is through the chair to planning staff. Will this proposed change to the OCP and zoning affect similar parcels on Cortes Island, or is it exclusive to this application? Like parcels that are 4 to 7 units on Cortes, will this change to the OCP legalize those other 4 to 7 size parcels?
Through the chair, I can answer that inquiry. The community land stewardship zone has a density set on the amount of land available. So in this case, actually, up to 11 units would be permitted in a CLS zone, but the applicants are only wishing to create up to 7 units. They have 4 already, and they want to increase that to 7, which is not permitted under the current zoning.
So will this change for this particular property affect other similar properties on Cortez?
Through the chair again, no, because it's a site-specific application to change the zoning of one particular property, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, so item C, any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 3, ESA Development Permit D.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Okay. On the receipt, anyone opposed? Carried.
And move B, the recommendation to
Second.
execute the development permit for Zari.
Moved and seconded, discussion, anyone opposed? Carried. Item 4, Fire Protection Service, Duncan Bay, Race Point.
Move receipt.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, any discussion?
Just Mr. Chair, just a number of options here, I suppose, for consultation. There was some interest from folks in the area to look at fire protection, and provided for you a number of options how to engage those folks.
Okay, so that comes up in B with the option 3.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone opposed to the report? Carried. On to B, committee recommend option 3.
Move the committee recommended option 3 be selected.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 5, Refuge Cove Boardwalk Project, funding options, report from CAO.
Move receipt.
Seconded.
Second.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
Discussion?
Sure. Just a quick comment, if I can, Mr. Chair, on this. Again, we have limited information other than some funding opportunities. There seems like this project would be gas tax eligible. There's plenty of money in Area C gas tax, and we understand that the application is for plus or minus, I think, about $50,000. So it would fit well within the current budget there. But again, we have limited information on the boardwalk project or the proponent to be funded. So if it's the committee's wish, we can further examine the details of the project.
Okay, and that was going to be my request as a subsequent motion, but Dr. Anderson wanted discussion on this. We can neither, well, I can't do it here. So we have to either pass this or not pass it. Motion on the floor.
Why can we not have discussion on motion on the floor, sir?
It's only to receive, Mr. Chair.
Understood.
That's true.
But I have a question through the staff, which I don't think is uncalled for under receipt.
If you have a question, staff, please go ahead.
And it was simply on this matter. This has been before staff for a month for a request of a further report. And I would have thought that staff would have been able to reach out to the folks at Refuge Cove to find out more about it. Was that somehow tricky to do, or does the staff feel like they need board direction to seek the further information that staff might need?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think the request was more in line with is there funding opportunities and what they are before the director wanted us to move forward on it. So there was a number of options we looked into, whether it can be funded out of parks or reserves or anything else. So what we're just trying to communicate is it seems to be eligible for a funding model that looks like gas tax eligibility. It's within the budget, and if the director committee wants us to explore further, we're happy to do that, knowing that there is a financial opportunity to support the project.
Okay, and my comment, I might as well make it here, is that I was going to ask that staff pursue further with the applicants further information on the project, who they are, what they do, all of the necessary things to make this a kosher application. I don't want to be giving gas tax to something that is the money's there, but does it fit perfectly? And the other part of the original question was funding options, not just from the regional district, but funding options from other places like ICE-T was one that I mentioned. I know there were a couple in there. I don't remember what they were, provincial, etc. So if there is other information concerning funding options, that would be helpful, but I'd also like staff to reach out to the applicants to get a better explanation as to what exactly it is the money's going to be used for and how that's going to benefit the community at large using gas tax money, if we use gas tax money. So
Move to refer back to staff for a further report.
we have a motion on the floor. So the motion is to receive. Anyone opposed? Okay, second motion.
Move to refer back to staff for a further report on information about the project and funding opportunities.
Second.
Funding opportunities from other sources.
Yeah.
Would you also
Okay.
want further exploration about the gas tax applicability?
I would just like to say
No.
funding opportunities, and that will include everything.
That's already been explored, Nova, and it does fit. So I don't think we need to spend any more time on that. It's just a matter of, do I want to spend the money on this or not? And that's going to depend on what is it. So I think Brenda's motion does cover all of the needed bits and pieces for staff to look into. And there was a seconder or not?
Second.
Tom? Okay, there's a seconder. Okay, any further discussion? All those, or anybody opposed? It's passed. Seward Valley Waste Service rates bylaw.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion, any opposition? Carried. Adam B.
Move B.
Recommend amendment.
Second.
Any discussion? Any opposition? Carried. Item 7, area D water rates bylaw.
Move receipt of
Amendment.
report.
Second.
There. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to be
Anyone?
voting against, I'm not voting against receipt, but I will be voting against the increase in water rates. And I would have an item C to add to after B is dealt with.
Okay, right now we're on A. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item D, the committee recommend adjustments, electoral area D water rates and regulation bylaw to balance the revenue requirements of the financial plan. Or mover,
Lee,
So moved.
sorry.
Moved.
second,
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion.
Yes,
All
the water rates have are proposed to go up to $1,130 a year, which is absurd. And so I'm not in favor. I won't support this unfair imposition by Campbell River of these rates just because they can. And I'm going to put forward a subsequent motion after this one, and I'll be voting against B.
Okay. Any further discussion on B? Anyone opposed to B?
Lee is opposed.
Okay. So B is carried. But you have a subsequent motion.
A subsequent motion, it would be, it would be C. And I move that staff bring back to committee a report to provide, to explore financial relief for the 25% of Area D residents, Northern Area D residents, who are having difficulty with this unfair water rate being imposed on them. I would like a report back on potentials for financial relief for people in Area D that cannot afford the proposed increases in the water rates. And
Director, can you see what Edith has there? Is that
staff bring back a report to explore financial relief for, just don't put 25% because the new census is coming out and that was based on the last census. So relief for Northern Area D residents who cannot afford the increase in this proposed increase in water rates from Campbell River. And
that's your motion? That's
yes.
your motion?
Wait a minute. Cannot afford, cannot is all one word. Cannot afford this proposed increase in water rates. No, that's good. That's good the way it is. I was going to suggest that perhaps we could explore with the province some kind of grant relief or COVID relief or
got
something.
A motion there, but let's stick with the motion.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. We need to look at that.
Is there a second?
yeah, Anderson will second that.
Okay, and is there discussion?
Yes, I'm already getting calls from residents who are absolutely terrified about these ever increasing water rates. Many are on fixed incomes. There was an estimated based on the last census, there was an estimated 300 people on fixed, pensions and fixed incomes who absolutely cannot afford these continual increases. So if staff could investigate if there's any, either through municipal affairs or through any funds we have regarding COVID relief, that we could have some kind of, rebate program for people who cannot afford these rates. that, you know, we can help people out. I mean, people are really struggling through COVID. A lot of people lost jobs, a lot of people on pensions, and $1,130 a year is ridiculous.
Got it. I think we've got it. Okay, so can we move on? Any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's passed. Okay, so that's your subsequent motion
Okay,
that was passed. Okay, electoral area administration, number 8, grant and aid authority. Motion to receive.
so
So
moved.
moved.
Just get Tom to
Oh.
put the agenda back up if you could. Thank you.
I believe he has a motion for us. Oh, move receipt first of all.
Second.
Okay, on receipt, is there
I have some
all those in
discussion,
favor?
please.
Or sorry.
Uh,
Okay, discussion on receipt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed in the minutes from this last meeting that it simply said that the matter be deferred until the next meeting. But in the staff report that we have in front of us, just pulling it up here, it said the attached report was deferred in order to obtain further clarification regarding the possibility of including financial assistance, grant and aid, as a component to the Electoral Area Administration Service. So I'm just wondering how staff got that direction, because it seems to me that last time the chair was aware that Gerald had a motion, and this time the chair is aware that Gerald's had a motion. I'm just wondering if I'm outside of some loop of communication and think that's inappropriate if that's happening. And then my second question has to do with these 2 now privileged and confidential legal opinions. The board has made it abundantly clear in the past that only the board can waive privilege. And I'm wondering why staff has made the determination to put these on the open agenda.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I think I can answer both those. One, we've been dealing with this EA admin grant and aid issue for, I don't know, a couple years, and there has been a lot of discussion about trying to get or amend, if you will, the ability to have a grant and aids within the EA admin so that the EAs are the ones in control of their voting on grants and aids. So I'll take the responsibility that through the last couple of years of discussion, I'm fairly clear on what the direction has been from the committee, and that is, can grant and aids be amended to the EA? So I've taken the liberty to do 2 things, I think, in the legal opinions is one, say, can it be, well, maybe it's only one thing. The EA admin was not structured to allow for financial assistance, so there's no ability to do that. As far as the legal opinion goes, I don't think there's anything really confidential in nature. It could be a legal opinion that maybe 10 other local governments have had, at the same time rather the issue. So I don't think there's anything really confidential or, that would hinder or inhibit the board's ability to move forward, given the opinion's open session. So it's staff's determination or mine that I don't have any issue making this legal opinion public. It's really interpretation of the Local Government Act, if you will.
And I don't mind this information specifically being public either. My question is around consistency of this being a board's discretion to waive privilege, and I would like that to be applied consistently, please.
Well, it's a funny term, discretion. Discretion and consistency, they're kind of, in my mind, can be contradictory statements, because I may use my discretion in what you feel is not a consistent manner, if you will. I get what you're talking about. I think this is an issue that is not sensitive or doesn't. Often we will take legal opinions or from other local governments that they have received information on to support what we're trying to do. So I don't think it's unusual. I don't think it's inconsistent either, but I appreciate your your view on that.
And that's just my point, that it's not inconsistent, and that I'm asking that we be consistent, and that the board has been abundantly clear that only the board can waive privilege. So I'm just
I mean, we
asking that
often
either, I'm asking that either that be the board's privilege consistently to waive privilege, or that it be explained why that's staff's privilege.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a good discussion, and I think it's worthy of further exploration if the committee wishes. There are, in fact, legitimate reasons why some legal opinions would not be shared publicly, while others would be, in staff's opinion. And if you would like us to further explore that and the rationale behind it, quite happy to do that. Typically, for these where there's no litigation involved, it's a question of interpretation of a statute. We typically have been making these available as part of the public agenda rather than in a confidential setting. There's really no reason to deal with these, in my opinion, in a confidential setting. But again, happy to explore that further if that's the committee's wish.
Comment, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, I'm quite confident with staff's discretion on these matters. I think in the past they've proven out that their ability to determine what should be released and what shouldn't is without question. So I don't think electoral areas have any interest in pursuing that.
And I would absolutely agree as the chair that we have done this for many, many years under different administrations, where if it is just something like Dave said, where it's just an interpretation of a bylaw or whatever, it's public information and it's no big deal. And to be in camera on it would be probably illegal. And secondly, it would probably be perceived very poorly by the public that we would be doing things like that behind closed doors when it's completely in public realm, and it's up to staff to decide. And I have full faith in staff to know, not use discretion, but to know if it needs to be in camera or not. And in this case, it doesn't. We're going to move on from there.
After receipt, Mr. Chair, I have a second.
So we're on receipt. Okay, so we'll do a receipt motion first. All those in favor, any opposed? None opposed, so we'll go on to you have a subsequent motion, Gerald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Edith has it. I'd move that a separate service be created for electoral area grants in aid.
Second.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay, moved and second. Any discussion? Okay, anybody opposed?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, what?
Yes to your question if there's any discussion.
Okay.
I'm not in support. I've said this consistently throughout this whole discussion. I'm not in support of a separate electoral area grant and aid service. And if one is created, I do not want Area B to participate. So I am asking the mover how this would be created to work only for those electoral areas that want to be in, rather than, as you so often advocate, not be forced to be something you don't want to be part of.
If I might respond, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thanks, sir.
Go ahead, Gerald.
Yes, thank you, Director Anderson. Yes, this will be consistent with everything else that I've recommended along this line. It will be only for those electoral areas that wish to participate. And if you do not wish to, then we're delighted to support you in that. For those who do wish to, we would hope that you would support us in that.
And just to conclude, I don't think this is a good route to go generally for any electoral area. I think that these get better consideration at the full board. And I certainly don't know any more about an application from electoral area A than a municipal director does. Just because I am a rural director doesn't mean that I have any greater insight into what's happening in the rural areas other than mine. And I think that having the full board's consideration of these will bring fairer mind to these. There is less parochial ability in a board of 13 than 4, regardless of who is at the table. So I won't be supporting this.
14 now.
Sorry, apologies. Thank you, 14.
Mr. Chair, I
Okay, is
support
there
it.
any?
I support the
you're
motion,
supporting-
and
Right.
I'm supporting it because I see it working in the Comox Valley, where the 3 electoral directors have their own grant and aid committee, and they compare notes as to who's received what applications. And we have had several instances recently where an organization applies to, separate areas, and even we had a $10,000 request last month, I think it was, from Friends of Strathcona Park. And I happened to be sitting in on the Comox Valley Board meeting to deal with Black Creek Oyster Bay things, and heard that the same organization applied for 10,000 from the Comox Valley. So I think it does help. I've noticed an overlap in applications to areas C and D, which it does help to confer with the other electoral directors and to coordinate our grants before they go to the board for final approval. And so I support this recommendation. I think we should be talking to each other. And I'm happy with the way, nothing seems to have changed since we've been going back and forth on this administration issue. I mean, all my grants are going through the Electoral Area Committee first, and then they go to the thing. If they get approved there, they go to the board. That's how it's always been. And if things don't work that way, and I'm not confident with the board handling my grants and aid, then I won't put any money into grants and aid. I'll have 0 in my grant and aid budget. So, I mean, I'm happy with going for the electoral areas being able to have this service.
One more comment, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for Director Anderson, I would suggest that you pay special attention to the policy that the board was putting in place regarding financial assistance. If that policy was adopted, that would greatly limit your ability to do your traditional grants and aids on Cortez. And if you feel it's appropriate for the board to control your budget, that's appropriate. But we don't feel it's appropriate for them to control our budgets.
Mr. Chair, the policy was put forward by staff, and there's not yet been comment by the board. And at present, my hope is still that the board will listen to the input from the electoral area directors about that policy amendment, but that conversation has yet to happen. And if the board ramrod some grant and aid policy through that I don't support, well, then I'll reconsider, but we haven't got there yet.
Okay.
Okay, well, much easier to consider now prior to having something, as you said, ramrodded through. And don't forget that this policy that was proposed was not just a staff policy. It had to do with our previous chair and previous board members that are no longer with us. And times have changed. So anyway, the motion is basically to, that a separate service be created for electoral area grants and aid, and then details to follow. Okay, any other discussion? All those, anybody opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed, so there's 3 in favor, carried.
And
Number 9, request.
Question,
Pardon
Mr.
me?
Chair, just on this matter, this all started a number of months ago when we had a draft policy for us before us for input. Are we foregoing any input opportunity on that policy at this time?
No, that's still out there. By my best memory, it's with a couple different committees concurrently. So it's still out there for circulation comment, but I think we still have to bring it back to a couple committees.
And I thought that that's what this was, that this
No.
report.
Mr. Chairman, this matter has today before you is really being brought back. It has been deferred a couple of times by EASC, and the latest direction that staff received was to do more research on the legalities of a separate service. So that does not diminish the opportunity or the need for the committee to reflect on the proposed policy if that is something that they wish to do.
Well, and that is my point, that we've got the legal opinion. It says we can't do our own thing, so we found a different way of doing our own thing, and that's fine. But there's still a proposed policy on the table that we want to offer our comments on, and I don't want to forgo that opportunity. And so
No,
if
that's still
I would
out there.
ask,
Yeah.
I would ask that then come back to maybe the next EASC in a more, I don't know, in a pointed way, so that we would provide our input to that policy and do that in parallel to pursuing this other option.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I believe we have already provided our comment on that policy, and it was pretty much no. So, you know, if you want to just say no again, or if you have other ideas, that's fine, but it will come back to us. It doesn't have to be at the next meeting. I don't really think we need to push the river. So onward, number 9, request for economic development, Quadro Island OAP.
Move receipt.
CAO's report moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those, anybody opposed? Item B,
Move the recommendation.
seconder. Okay, Gerald. Any discussion? Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Bylaws, Area D, water meter rate amendments. Seashells on the sea. Okay, move to receipt. Seconder. Is there a seconder?
Yep, seconder.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Carried.
Opposed.
So if I may, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
just for Director Lee's information, this is an amendment to the bylaw to allow to give breaks to people who have had leaks in the system. So to not
Oh,
penalize
I thought
them.
it was enacting the previous
No,
thing.
no.
Okay.
What we do is, yeah. So there's the current bylaw is too penal for people that have leaks and haven't discovered them. So we found a way to be able to give them a financial break on once a leak is determined. Yeah.
Okay, so you think this is supportable? So I would
Yeah,
remove my objection to it.
Okay, so it's carried. And on to B, which is
Quadrant links, move receipt.
On the water meters.
Oh,
Well, that's what I thought we were on.
the committee
Okay.
recommends
No,
that
wait a
bylaw
minute.
number 426.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, the
item B
staff
of the water.
recommendation is to recommend that it be approved at the board so that so that the issue of providing rebates for property owners who have experienced significant billings for leaks that they were not aware of can be addressed.
Move B.
Okay,
Second.
seconder. Discussion. Anyone opposed? Carried. Okay, then we have 432 433, report from the CAO.
Move receipt.
Second.
Mr. Chair, so just if I
Okay.
can jump in here, Aniko wanted to speak to this before we move to B. I think there's a bit of an error in one of the recommendations.
Okay, I also want to speak to it.
Sure.
I have items to bring up. So, Aniko, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you to the chair and committee. I just wanted to update the committee with respect to the item before you today. Initially, the recommendations you'll see before you also included first reading of bylaw. We believe that that is premature at this time, and to follow the process that we've done and you've seen in the last 3 applications earlier today, what we are recommending is that we proceed with referral and consultation only at this point in time. The application before you is with respect to the Quadrilinks golf course. The golf course is looking to include some RV camping sites as part of their development as a form of stay and play proposal over the golf course lands. We're looking at approximately 20 spaces over 2 phases over a large section of their lands, at which time they will also be accommodating any sort of environmental features with respect to the lands. What we're looking to do here today is merely refer the proposal out to agencies and First Nations that have interests over the lands. We will be advising those First Nations and agencies of the proposal only. They will not be receiving any copies of any proposed bylaws at this time. Those bylaws will be amended as per comments received back through the agency referral and consultation process. And what you have seen before you today as a proposed bylaw is very, very draft at this time and is not comprehensive in nature whatsoever. We will be doing multiple changes to the bylaw to ensure its consistency with both the OCP and the zoning bylaw and those zones that are currently already in force over the bylaw to ensure consistency over land use for RV sites only, and no tenting will be permitted as part of this proposal. Any more questions, I would be happy to answer.
Okay, so if I may speak from the chair, if not, I'll step down. It depends on what you want. The wish of the
Cleaner.
committee?
Cleaner to step down, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, you're still on receipt, just so you're aware of that.
Okay. Okay, so, well, I'm not sure if this is on receipt because I think it is actually. Since Aniko has now said that there is no recommendation for first reading, then I wouldn't have any place to speak. So I think I have to speak here under receipt. So I would be glad to step down. Brenda, would you mind controlling
Sure,
the wheel?
I'll take the chair, sure. Okay, Director Abram, would you like to speak?
Okay, so I have had contact from the applicant on this to talk about it, to let me know what they were proposing. I've worked with the golf or the Quadrilinks on both the golf course and on their residential subdivision next door to it. And the owner decided that he wanted to speak to me personally before this went to the committee today. So we had a nice long conversation. And he agreed and was quite clear that I've gone through and I've done line by line where places needed to have a word change. Okay, and all of those changes have been recommended by and agreed to by the applicant, not me. Okay, so this is the applicant's words. Every place that it says the word campground or camping or anything other than RV site needs to be changed before this can be referred out. So that's his wishes, not mine. And he was supposed to be talking with Hanukkah about 2 or 3 days ago. I can't remember when it was, whether it was the beginning of the week or the end of last week. But anyway, those are the wishes. Like in the first paragraph, page 1, it says campground. It should read RV site. When you get into the permitted uses, where was it? Sorry, it basically says campground is an accessory use, I believe it was called. And that is not what he wants. He does not want campground designation of any type to go along with this, because it will derail it, according to the community. Campgrounds have been traditionally turned down. So he doesn't want this turned down based on a wording, perception, because these are places for high-end RV sites that will not have any kind of, protuberances or outside tents or anything like that. And they will not be residences ever. It will always be for temporary occupancy. That is I believe, in his letter to Anako, to the planning department, that this is strictly for recreational, temporary golf camping. And that's put it to me. And apparently it's some kind of thing that is nationwide that people do, where they sell golf packages with RV occupancy allowed on their property. And then people get, 2 or 3 or a week or whatever of golfing passes to be able to golf every day, and actually live right there on the site in their RV. So I just want to make sure that all of those changes are made prior to referral. So if I could have confirmation from planning that will happen, I can proceed with the other motions.
So planning?
Thank you through the chair. This is an interesting one. RV sites are a form of camping, so I'm not sure how you distinguish between the two. Where I was trying to get at earlier was the fact that we need to be consistent throughout both the OCP and the zoning bylaw. Certainly clarity can be provided within this RC1 zone to exclude any other form of camping other than RVs. I'm uncertain as to how we could possibly put in high-end RVs, but in any event, certainly we can address the requests of the applicant through this process.
Okay, I was not asking for high-end, I was talking to you. The words that I asked to be changed or removed were campground and camping, and be replaced in all instances throughout the bylaw, planning report, everywhere where it comes up. No word will say campground or camping. They will all say RV sites. There is quite a distinction in the public perception. Whether there is in the planning department's perception or not really doesn't matter, because this is going to the public, and the public is going to make a decision on this. And I would like to support this application. It will be an asset to the actual, bottom line of the golf course, which has been having a hard time. So, if it can go forward in its correct wording, I think everybody will be happier. So I would just
So
like
do
to.
we need to refer this back to staff to make that amendment to the proposal before it receives first reading and goes out to agencies?
Well, I believe we've already been told it won't be going to first
Correct.
reading, but that it
Okay.
can go to agencies. So can staff, I'm sure you have them in writing. If not, I can give them to you right now in writing, the discussion between the applicant and myself, and exactly every line, paragraph, page 1, page 2, line 6, all that. It's all here in writing. If you'd like to just go through, make the changes and refer it out, then we'd be fine. We don't have to refer it back.
Okay.
I would think.
So do you have a
you-
motion proposing the
Well,
changes to this?
Yeah, okay, I'll make a motion that the changes that I present in writing to the planning department be incorporated into the application by quadrilinks, and then we'll get to item C, Pearl. So, Dave, can I do that?
Madam Chair, I would recommend that you do have a motion to receive on the floor, and I believe
Okay, let's
appropriate.
call the question on receipt and get that out of the way. So question on receipt, anyone opposed? Carried. Okay, now. Tom?
Well, Madam Chair, I believe Director Abram now wishes to introduce the resolution. He's already pretty much stated it.
Yeah.
I don't know if staff
Yep.
have
Okay, I can email it to, I'll email it to, who would you like me to email it to? Edie? She's not going to put it up on the board, but it certainly go to Aniko. I would assume to our CAO and to you, Tom.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think we can put it up for all directors to see if you have it there.
Oh, you can just stick up the email. Okay, fine. All right, just give me 1 sec to finish the typing, which is almost done. Okay, here it comes. Give it 15 minutes to get there via satellite. Well, I just heard it leave. First one to receive it gets a prize.
So, Mr. Chair, is this, I just got it here myself. Is this, it looks like, you know, a cut and paste. Is this just unclear about where this direction is coming from yourself? It looks like I don't see it as a forward email or from anybody else, or just a bunch of text.
This is the text that was discussed by email and phone, and I compiled it and put it into one document that I could forward to, actually Bill was supposed to forward it, Quadrilinks was supposed to forward it to Aniko. And if he didn't, well, here it is. And then it goes into the report and bylaw that was going to be on our agenda today for first and second reading.
Okay, so just to be clear, the way this is amendments coming from yourself. That's, I mean, it doesn't bother me, but that's what this is.
There are amendments coming. I'm forwarding them to you, Dave. I am passing them on from the app. Okay, you can call him right now if you want and ask him.
I'm not going to call him. I mean, if this, I'm just saying this is text amendments from you. I don't see anybody else on here. It's fine. I just want to be clear that this, we cannot be saying these are from the developer or somebody else when there's no evidence of it here. So they're just text amendments from yourself.
Could I suggest perhaps that these amendments be forwarded to the board with the recommendation of the committee subject to concurrence from the applicant between now and board?
That would not be my wish. I want this to be in the minutes and in the changes now before we go through another 2 weeks of waiting so that the staff can go ahead with the next portions, which are referring it out.
And
I
then-
need to hold it up.
And it's fine,
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Chair. I just can't represent these as comments we've received from the developer because they're not. They're just a cut and paste from you. That's all I'm saying.
And
I have a
Madam
question.
All right.
Chair,
But I'm saying-
Order, please, order. Would you please go through the chair if you want to speak, and that goes
Sorry,
for
Madam
staff
Chair.
and,
Yeah, I forgot it was you. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, staff
Madam
and
Chair.
directors. We don't want to get into, everyone
Madam-
talking over.
May I
So-
put my hand up, Madam Chair?
Director Abram, yes?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Uh,
And then Director Anderson.
CAO, I would suggest that, yes, these are coming to you via my computer. I'm the director. But it would be very, I think, appropriate to say that these are coming to you from the director, resulting from discussion with the applicant. Is there any problem with that?
We'll have to represent it that way because that's the best we got.
The way I just said, or what?
We will communicate it as amendments from, conversations, I suppose, email exchanges from you and the applicant, I suppose.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, I think that the motion on bylaws 432 and 433 should read that the bylaws be amended as follows, and then give those amendments. And somebody second it, and then we'll vote on it. And that'll be that.
Okay, I'd move that. If you want to take that other motion off the floor.
That the bylaws be amended as follows, and then give your list. And somebody second it, and we'll vote on it.
Has it been moved, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Director Abram moved it. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
And I have Director Anderson waiting to speak. Director Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My earlier comment stands. I think that this would be very advisable to have this be subject to concurrence with the applicant, and I'm not anticipating or intending in any way that this be a delay. The staff won't do anything until this is directed by the board in a couple of weeks anyway. And if staff can get concurrence from the applicant in the next couple of weeks that this is indeed their wish, then great, there's no holdup. But I think we're on really thin grounds here. I don't mistrust Director Abram at all, but we just don't have in front of us evidence of it. So I would like to say that these bylaw amendments be supported, recommended to board, subject to concurrence with the applicant. And if what Director Abram is saying is indeed correct, which I don't mistrust it to be, that will be a very simple thing to do. But I think that doing this without that assurance is unadvisable at this time.
Madam Chair, comment?
Yes, Director Wally?
Yes, I have a question for staff. Is it a legal requirement for the applicant to agree to these amendments or not?
Well, if I can, Madam Chair, answer that. I think there's an appropriateness. It's the applicant's application, not the directors or staffs or the communities. So to make changes to an applicant's application is really up to them.
Right.
So if these are changes that they're proposing to us, it's their application.
Right. I understand.
Madam Chair?
Okay. Yes, Director Abram?
Okay, so I would like to ask through Dave to his staff, mainly Onico, did you have a conversation with Bill Peary in the last few days concerning these amendments?
Thank you through the chair to Director Abram. The applicant emailed something through to John on Monday, looking to potentially make some changes to the staff report and bylaws that were already placed on the agenda. What you're seeing before you are requests to change the report that you've already received and has already been placed on the agenda. This has absolutely nothing to do with a referral being sent out. Referrals that go out do not include the staff reports that are before you today. So this really is a moot point. We're not going to go through and change the staff report that we've already written, which was based on the applicant's proposal and submission at that time. The language used within the staff report before you and the attached super draft bylaw contain the language that was provided by the applicant as part of his proposal. The planning staff does not change the applicant's proposal or purpose or project in any way, shape, or form. So should you wish to have a referral sent out, which would potentially exclude language that would appear to be campgroundy in nature, and it was the applicant's wish to revise his proposal and language to state RV sites, that could be done. But I don't believe that we need to go back here and change the staff report nor the draft bylaw, because again, that draft bylaw is not going anywhere and has subsequent changes.
And if I may, Madam Chair,
Sure.
I would totally disagree with the General Manager of Development Services and say that this intransigence about changing a staff report that is before us on a agenda is inappropriate. What you are doing is putting the staff report out to the public as it is, and it is going to be reviewed by the public for at least 2 weeks in an improper form. It's not what the applicant wants. So you're going to be basically forming opinions in the community's minds concerning this application on incorrect information. Now, if you looked at the email that came from Quadrilinks to John, you would see that it mirrors this, what I have said. So that's the applicant telling you that's what he wishes to see. That's the applicant telling you that's what he wants to apply for. So, you're going to leave me no choice but to defer this to the next Electoral Area Services Committee, which is 1 month away, which is completely inappropriate as far as I'm concerned, as far as the applicant is concerned, I'm sure, because he could start moving forward on this sooner than a month. If we were, able to just make the changes that he has agreed to and asked me to bring forward to the board. This is the kind of thing that, we talk about the procedure bylaw. Well, the procedure bylaw is now getting in our way of doing business, and I think that's wrong. And
if I may, Madam Chair, just to respond,
I will defer.
So this has nothing to do with the procedures bylaw. I've worked in local government for 30 years and never once has a staff report that's been published and put on agenda been amended. We wrote the staff report based on the applicant's information. We published it on Friday and it has been out there. If subsequent to that, the applicant gives us new information, we can't go rewrite history. He's changed what his application was and what we published. That's not on us. That we can't go back and edit this staff report retroactively to information he gave us 2 days ago. We wrote it and published it based on the information he given us. If things have changed, fair enough, but it's already been out there in the public, and we never, ever rewrite published staff reports, and that has nothing to do with the procedures bylaw.
Okay, I have Director Anderson to speak next, please, and then Director Abram.
I was basically just going to say what our CAO said. I know there have been many occasions where directors have asked for staff reports to be amended, and it's just, in my mind, completely out of line. I hadn't realized that that's what we were doing, because the motion on the floor says that the bylaw be amended as follows. So my question to the mover is, are the changes here suggested, first paragraph, page 2, etc., the bylaw or a staff report?
I think he wants the staff report.
Bylaw?
So if it is indeed the staff report, then the
Question.
the resolution.
Director Abram?
Okay, you asked me a question. The changes are to the bylaw. The staff report is based on them presenting the bylaw. So, you know, if you want to nitpick and say you're changing the staff report, well, maybe you are, to the degree that you're changing the bylaw.
Okay, so if what you're proposing is changes to the bylaw, but we're not giving bylaw first reading at this point, I think great, hold on to this. That's great information to have for when we get to first reading. But I think that this is not useful at this time, given the bylaw is not on the table. And I don't think any delay is required, because this amendment that you're trying to make, Director Abram, can absolutely be incorporated at the time of first reading.
In fact, to add to that, it's the applicant's application, and their wishes is to have changes made. And I think we've heard that Aniko said that the bylaw is draft. I'm pretty confident that those changes will be made to the bylaw. So you will see the bylaw with those revisions made. What you're not going to see, though, is us change the staff report that we wrote. The bylaw will come back in its corrected form with the changes that the applicant wants.
Okay, so would it help to just say that, subject to confirmation with the applicant, that the bylaws be amended as follows, and then just give all those changes before it comes back to us for first reading?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, that's what should happen before we
what
get
we're
it back for
proposing.
first. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm suggesting that, Director Abram. I totally trust you. I think that you're reflecting what the applicant said he wanted, but maybe if we just say that, then everybody will be happy.
And I think Aniko confirmed that. So,
yeah.
And we will make those changes to the bylaw. I think what we're arguing, though, about is the staff report. The staff report was written based on the information that we had. So.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the director's prerogative to, you know, respond to the staff report as they see fit. Like, they don't have to accept all the recommendations in the staff report, and this is subsequent.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's subsequent to the staff report. It's prior to first reading now. So I think this is just fine. We don't have to address, you know, rewriting history or anything. This is the director's motion to proceed with getting this moving. So I think it's fine the way it is. Director Abram, do you have any comment?
Yes, first of all, subject to confirmation with the applicant.
Yeah, applicant. Edith, applicant. Is that okay with the seconder?
Yep, good for me.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none.
Just hang on.
Okay.
Hang on, Brenda.
Sorry.
At the end of that line, be amended as follows. The other words that you threw in there originally were prior to it coming back for any readings, first, second, whatever.
Right. Prior to first reading,
That's
or
inherent in
even
what we do.
prior to consideration of first reading. It might not get first reading, you never know.
Thank you.
Consideration of. Sorry, I'm taking big liberties with the chair here, but just want to move this along. Consideration of first reading. Okay, is that okay with everybody? Jim and Gerald and everybody okay? Okay, so we have the motion on the floor, moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, carried. And I'll throw the chair back to Director Abram.
Okay, thank you. Now I need to get back to an agenda. I don't have an agenda in front of me anymore. Just a sec. Hang on. Okay, here it is.
So we have
Right, so just to be clear on what we just did then, we received the CAO's report, and we did not recommend to the board for first reading, correct?
We're on C basically.
So the first part was basically under CAO's report. All the amendments is what I'm talking about. Okay, now we're on to C. Okay, so both of those, C and D, need to say the amended bylaw.
There, no, Aniko just told you the bylaws don't go out with it.
How can they respond to it if they don't see the bylaw? What are they responding to?
But she said she had the draft bylaw in place. Like the bylaw that's included in here is not what you're going to see.
Okay, and what I'm asking is, when you send something out to the First Nations and the agencies, will it be the revised bylaw?
I'll let Aniko respond.
Aniko? Oh,
Thank
I'm
you.
not sharing.
Thank you to the chair. The bylaw does not get referred out to the First Nations or agencies. What they will be receiving, as indicated, is the proposal as provided by the applicant.
Okay, so the proposal is basically the incorrect wording that I was trying to correct, and did through motion try to correct through a motion. But they're going to see the other bylaw, or not bylaw, but proposal. They're going to see the original proposal. Is that correct? If these were just passed as is right now.
Through the chair, the referral will include the most recent information received from the applicant.
So you'll hold off on this until you have received confirmation from the applicant that the changes that I made are correct. Is that correct?
To the chair in so many words, except the changes that you made were to the staff report and the draft bylaw, not to their proposal. So they will be advised that a referral is going out with the most recent information received to date with respect to their proposal, not including the draft staff or the draft bylaw or the staff report that has been provided.
The one that's provided now, you mean?
Correct.
The one that's provided right now.
Correct. They don't get that.
Okay, so what they would get is, with confirmation from the applicant, they would get the revised application and they would get the revised bylaw word. Is that correct? That's the way I'm understanding you to explain it. So if I'm wrong, tell me.
To the chair, you are correct. As long as you're not saying they're receiving a bylaw, they are not receiving a bylaw. They are receiving the applicant's most recent submission.
Okay, so that will be the submission that has the changes in it that referred to the application.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the. That's all you needed to say. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Chairman, you have no motions on the floor, Kirk?
so the motion that needs to be made then would be that the First Nations consultation process, as outlined in the staff report, for the revised application CP blah 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 be recommended for approval.
Okay, I'll move that.
Is there a seconder?
We don't have a revised proposal in front of us. I would happily second C as presented, understanding that the referrals will go out with the best information staff have.
Yes, that's correct.
So if there's not a seconder
Okay.
for that, I would move B as presented.
C.
C.
Thank you, C.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Okay. Anybody opposed? Passed. Item D, agency referral.
Move D as written.
Second.
Discussion. Anyone opposed? Passed. New business. Gerald.
I think this is Brenda's motion, but I'll let her.
I thought you were,
Um,
sorry.
yes,
This is where you were bringing up the,
planning procedures bylaw, and we just saw a perfect example of why we need to review the planning procedures bylaw. So that the motion would be that staff bring back a report regarding consultation prior to sending out to agencies on the planning procedures bylaw.
Mr. Chair, how about if we just say that staff bring back the procedures bylaw for review?
Okay, that would be good. We could do that, but it's nice to give the
mover,
staff.
seconder. Mover Brenda, seconder Gerald.
Okay.
Anyone opposed?
Anderson's opposed.
Too late. Just kidding. Yeah, Anderson's opposed. Okay, so the only thing left is termination.
Move
Move
termination.
termination, second. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.